Ivory Coast 1-0 Ecuador FIFA World Cup 2026. Sometimes, football waits until the very last moments to reveal its hero. For nearly 90 minutes, Ivory Coast and Ecuador traded attacks, struck the woodwork, and searched for a breakthrough that simply would not come. Then, just when a scoreless draw seemed inevitable, one perfectly timed run and one clinical finish changed everything. This was a match decided by patience, resilience, and one unforgettable moment. Quote of the match: "Champions are often remembered not for how long they controlled the game, but for how they seized the moment that mattered most." Match overview. The FIFA World Cup 2026 featured an intriguing Group E encounter between Ivory Coast and Ecuador on June 14, 2026, at Philadelphia Stadium, Lincoln Financial Field, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Kickoff took place at 6 p.m. local time, EDT, in front of an announced crowd of 68,274 spectators, many of whom created a vibrant atmosphere while supporting Ecuador throughout the evening. It marked Philadelphia's first match as a World Cup host city and brought together two nations widely viewed as potential dark horses capable of challenging the traditional powers in the tournament. Ivory Coast entered the tournament making its first World Cup appearance since 2014 after an outstanding qualifying campaign in which it conceded very few goals. Ecuador also arrived with tremendous confidence, carrying a 19-match unbeaten streak dating back to September 2024 and boasting one of the strongest defensive records in South American qualifying. With Germany having already defeated Curaçao earlier in the day, both teams understood how valuable 3 points would be in the race for qualification from Group E. The story of the match. The opening stages immediately hinted that this would not be a cautious affair. Ecuador looked dangerous whenever they won possession high up the field, while Ivory Coast relied on the explosive pace of teenager young Diamond, whose direct running repeatedly stretched the Ecuadorian defense. The first major scare came in the 23rd minute, when John Yeboah unleashed a powerful strike that crashed against the crossbar. Only minutes later, Ecuador came agonizingly close again as Alan Minda also rattled the woodwork, leaving the Ivorians relieved to escape without conceding. Despite Ecuador's pressure, Ivory Coast gradually found more space on the counterattack. Diamond continued creating opportunities down the wing, but neither side could produce the finishing touch before half-time. Early in the second half, the momentum began to shift. Ivory Coast nearly opened the scoring when Eli Wahi volleyed against the crossbar, making it the third time the woodwork had denied a goal during the match. Recognizing the need for fresh energy, Ivory Coast manager Emers Faye introduced Amad Diallo and Angio Bonny in the 56th minute. The substitutions immediately added greater movement and attacking intensity. Bonny's ability to hold up play allowed Ivory Coast to advance farther up the pitch, while Diallo's pace created new problems for Ecuador's defenders. Ecuador still threatened on several occasions, forcing goalkeeper Yahia Fofana into an important save, while both defenses continued to stand firm as the match entered its closing stages. Then came the decisive moment. In the 90th minute, defender Wilfried Singo surged forward on the right flank before delivering a perfectly weighted pass toward the edge of the penalty area. Waiting in space was substitute Amad Diallo, who calmly guided a left-footed finish into the far corner beyond the goalkeeper. After 90 minutes of deadlock, Ivory Coast finally had its breakthrough. Ecuador pushed desperately during stoppage time, but Ivory Coast defended resolutely to secure a dramatic 1-0 victory and claim 3 valuable points in Group A. Match analysis. Long before kickoff, many observers viewed this as one of the most evenly matched contests of the opening round. Ecuador entered with remarkable defensive consistency and an extended unbeaten run, while Ivory Coast arrived full of confidence after an impressive qualification campaign and a talented squad blending experienced internationals with exciting young players. The first half largely belonged to Ecuador. Their pressing disrupted Ivory Coast's build-up, and twice they were denied only by the crossbar. Had either opportunity found the net, the complexion of the match could have been entirely different. The second half, however, showcased Ivory Coast's adaptability. Coach Emers Faye's substitutions changed both the structure and tempo of his attack. Bonny's physical presence allowed the Elephants to retain possession higher up the field, while Diallo's fresh legs gave Ecuador's tiring defense a different challenge to solve. Rather than forcing attacks through the middle, Ivory Coast increasingly found success by advancing through the wide areas, eventually producing the move that decided the contest. Another major factor was defensive resilience. Although Ecuador created several dangerous opportunities, Ivory Coast never lost its organization. Goalkeeper Yahia Fofana remained composed whenever called upon, while the backline consistently recovered after turnovers. For Ecuador, the defeat was especially painful because the overall performance was far stronger than the final score suggested. They struck the woodwork twice, controlled possession for longer periods, and remained organized defensively for almost the entire match. Yet football often rewards efficiency over volume, and Ivory Coast converted the one opportunity that truly mattered. The victory immediately positioned Ivory Coast among the leading contenders in Group A, while Ecuador suddenly faced increased pressure heading into its remaining group stage fixtures. Match statistics. Statistically, the match reflected just how closely contested it was. Ecuador finished with a slight edge in possession, controlling 52% of the ball compared with 48% for Ivory Coast. They also completed more passes and earned 5 corner kicks, while Ivory Coast won 3. Despite Ecuador enjoying more possession, Ivory Coast proved more efficient in front of goal, recording 15 total shots, 4 on target, and producing the tournament's decisive finish. Ecuador attempted 12 shots, but managed only 1 effort on target, with 2 additional attempts striking the crossbar. Discipline played only a minor role in the contest. The match featured 2 yellow cards and no red cards, allowing both teams to maintain 11 players throughout the evening. Although physical at times, the game never descended into reckless challenges, leaving the outcome to be decided by footballing quality rather than disciplinary incidents. Note, some live reports listed additional cautions, but FIFA's official match summary records 2 yellow cards. Ultimately, the statistics tell the story of a remarkably balanced contest in which margins were incredibly small. Ecuador enjoyed slightly more possession and several outstanding chances, but Ivory Coast produced the only finish that counted, transforming one late attack into all 3 points. Group E had promised one of the tournament's most competitive battles, and Ivory Coast and Ecuador delivered exactly that. For nearly 90 minutes, every attack, every defensive recovery, and every missed opportunity built toward a dramatic conclusion. When the decisive chance finally arrived, Amad Diallo seized it with remarkable composure, giving Ivory Coast a memorable World Cup victory and a crucial advantage in the race for the knockout stage. For Ecuador, the performance offered plenty of encouragement despite the defeat, but it also served as a reminder of football's harsh reality. Dominating stretches of a match means little if the final chance belongs to your opponent.